Hi folks, Amy here with a video just to wrap up the assignments and work that you were doing last week, week one. I will always post a wrap-up video like this, usually the day after we wrap up a week, usually on Monday or Tuesday, just to kind of give you some feedback and direction in terms of the work that you were doing the week before, but then also kind of to preview some of the assignments that you're going to be doing in the upcoming days. You may have noticed that I also posted video midweek, usually on Thursday or Friday of every single week, where I give you updates, usually focusing on the discussions that are going on at that time, but also addressing any clarifications I need to make in terms of the other assignments that you're working on. However, this week, when I posted my video on Friday, I got an email from one of you that said that the audio was not working, that you couldn't hear what I was saying in the video. So I do really appreciate that person emailing me, but I only got an email from one of you, and I know that this was a problem for everyone. So please do, in the future, feel free to email me when you have any problems accessing course materials or any problems with the course in general. You know, chances are that if you're having a problem, all the students are having a problem, and I really want you guys to feel comfortable communicating with me about these things so that I can address it as quickly as possible, so that everyone can benefit and get their assignments completed on time. So because the video on Friday, the midweek video for week one, wasn't working, I'm going to try to address some of the feedback that I gave you there in this video today and kind of combine that into my wrap-up for week one, which is also what I'm hoping to do in this video today. I also want to point out just a couple of things in the news. So if you log into your news item this afternoon, it's going to look like this, or excuse me, log into the course, your news items are going to look like these here. At the beginning of every week, I will always post a to-do list for what you need to do for that particular week in the form of a welcome item. This has got all the things that you'll need to complete over the course of this week. You can also find this to-do list under content for the weekly modules. So this just kind of explains all the objectives and things that you need to accomplish at different times throughout this week. Let me also point out that I've already posted a couple other announcements here. So even though this welcome post came through this morning at the beginning of week two, I've already got it almost buried here under a couple of other announcements. So because I use the news so much for announcements and all kinds of news and information, as well as these videos that I'm recording right now, make sure that you always scroll down and read everything that's in the news since you last logged in, and that way you won't miss any items that may have gotten buried because I'm posting so often into this feed. And then I also want to mention for this week, we are still engaging in two simultaneous discussions this week. We have our writing prompt discussion and our open discussion. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in just a few minutes as I go over what you did in week one. But let me remind you guys here that you do have to have your original threads for the writing prompt discussion. This week it's a quote and paraphrase activity. You need to have those original threads posted by midnight on Wednesday. Then provide comments to 2 of your classmates by midnight on Friday, and then complete a final reflection within your own original thread that responds to the comments you received and synthesizes everything you learned in completing the writing prompt throughout the week, and that needs to be posted by midnight on Sunday. I know that several of you were struggling with the due dates and deadlines throughout week one, and so I really want us to get on track for week two so that everyone can get as many points as possible for their hard work without posting things late. And then simultaneous with our writing prompt discussion this week, we do also have an open discussion. Remember that for open discussions, I only allow 3 original threads. I think there was some confusion with that last week. And then after that, everyone can only reply to those original 3. And you do need to be putting as much in-depth thought into your replies as you would put into an original in this case, because it's designed that way. And let me think what else. Oh, you do need to be participating on 3 different days throughout the week for the open discussion. So let me go take a look at the rubrics for the different discussion assignments again here under course overview, just to give you those specifications a little bit more clearly. So here's our writing prompt discussions. Remember that you do have to have your original thread posted by Wednesday, comments to 2 classmates by midnight on Friday, and then your final reflection by midnight on Sunday. There are some contingencies here in the points breakdowns for what will happen if you do post your original work late. So if you do not post your original work late, you can't even get a C on these writing prompts. So make sure that you are addressing the prompt in your own original thread by midnight on Wednesday of any week that we have a writing prompt. And then if you're posting your comments to your peers late, say for example on Saturday or Sunday, you can see some contingencies for how that's going to affect your points values in this breakdown here as well. And then many of you did not even complete the reflection portion at the end of the week, and so that's automatically going to put you down in the D range as well. So do make sure that you're completing all components of the assignment so that you can get at least a C or better or a passing grade on these writing prompts. And then for the open discussions, it really doesn't matter what day you post as long as you post on 3 separate days. And that's different than posting 3 separate times. You actually have to get into those on multiple days. And once those 3 original threads are posted, you can only reply. And I will show you here that the grades are not based on whether you've posted an original or a reply. The grades are based on how frequently you post and the depth of thinking in your posts. So ideally, you would be able to post just as thoughtful of a comment through a reply to someone else's original as you would if you were posting an original yourself. So I'll try to provide some examples of that in just a minute as we go over the work you did on week 1. And then again, don't forget that under your table of contents in content, you can find under each unit weekly modules that have everything that you need to do for each particular week. So looking at week 2, this is the to-do list that is just the same as the one you'll find in the news item. These are the videos you need to watch. This is the article you'll have to read this week, your 2 discussions, the syllabus quiz, and the reading matrices. And then the last thing I'll point out is that it's always a good idea to read the book, whatever the text assignment is for that week, as well as watch the videos before you complete the discussions, because that will give you the information that you need to be able to successfully address whatever the writing prompt or the open discussion is asking you to do. So I'm going to go ahead and look at week 1's writing prompt discussion to try to give you an example of this. So a lot of the materials for week 1, we're talking about the difference between close and critical reading. So for the week 1 writing prompt, I was trying to address the close reading portion of the content for that week, and so all it asked you to do was to identify Stephen Johnson's thesis. And I think many of you were a little bit confused about the close versus critical stuff, because a lot of what I found in these original posts was critical. So it would include your opinion or your evaluation of Johnson's argument. And remember, when you are doing close reading and summary, as you're doing here when you're trying to pick out the main idea, you really just want to stick to what the writer has said, remain objective, and do not add any of your own opinion or your own interpretation of it. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at a few examples that I thought were strong representations of the thesis statement, and then we can later look at the open discussion, and that's where I was really trying to get you guys to provide your critical responses to the text and your opinion on these issues. So it's not that those weren't important, but here for the writing prompt, I was just asking you to pick out what you thought the thesis was or what Johnson was trying to say. And I think there was maybe some confusion on that, but several of you were able to successfully pick out that thesis. So I wanted to highlight some of those examples here. This is something I like to do in my midweek and final comment videos. I call it 5 minutes of fame. It's where I pick out something that you guys have said and kind of make it famous by showing it to everyone as a strong example of what I was looking for in that week's assignment. So looking at the thesis of the first Johnson article, this person picked out, it's true that reading of printed word is down, but reading overall certainly isn't. And in fact, the reading level of children has risen. It is the way we read that has changed, not the amount. And so I picked this one because I think it's a really good example of how to take Johnson's ideas and put it entirely in your own words so that it doesn't match any of the original vocabulary or sentence structure of what the actual article is saying. And so that's always going to be a good strategy when you're writing summary and trying to remain objective but also accurate. And the other thing you'll notice here is that this is very concise, and it takes what is a very complex argument from Johnson, puts it in this person's own words, and makes it more concise and still a way that is accurate. So I thought that was very effective here. This person says, based on the recent report by the NEA of teenagers and their ever-declining use of books and novels, it seems as though the amount of reading they do has declined. A deeper look into the time spent reading on electronic devices and the reading comprehension levels of different generations reveals that the increased use of electronics and decreased use of books hasn't really affected their ability to read. It seems as though the generation that spent more time in front of the TV rather than phones or computers has a lower reading comprehension level. So while I think this could be a little more concise, I really like the way that this representation of Johnson's thesis pushes Johnson's article up against the NEA study. So this was some confusion that I saw in several people's posts, that some people were trying to say that Johnson was arguing for the same thing that the NEA was, and that is not true at all. Johnson actually disagrees with the NEA. He does not think reading is on the decline. He does not think that screen reading should be ignored, and in fact he thinks that reading literacy levels have risen in general among this generation. So I think the writer here does a good job representing that kind of thesis, counter-thesis structure of the article, which is crucial to understanding Johnson's argument. And then this person says, today most people in our society focus on technology and the many uses it has on our everyday lives. This article, Dawn of the Digital Natives by Stephen Johnson, recognizes technology as a benefit to a person's literacy and reading skills, but there's always a disagreeing point of view when it comes to an argument. The use of the internet mostly consists of readers looking for articles, blogs, books, news, and or media readings for their own personal or schooling purposes, but the National Endowment of the Arts hardly sees screen reading as actual reading. Even though the NEA disagrees and continues to use strict bias on the matter, technology has raised school testing levels and reading levels when conducted in a study by monitoring a group's use on the internet. So this could definitely be more concise. I usually encourage people to stay away from specific examples in summary, like this here, the study that was conducted by the other group, not the NEA that Johnson references. However, I think this person does a really good job of crediting Johnson and using attributive tags here, and I think it really is accurate, especially if you took this part and then kind of skipped down and attached it to this part. That would be a little more concise, but still get the argument across in an accurate way. And then finally, this person says, the main idea of Dawn of the Digital Natives by Stephen Johnson is that researchers are falsely concluding that the Google generation is losing ground in literacy scores. Researchers are not including digital reading in their studies, which are showing a decline in the amount that young people read. The scholars involved in these studies have unfairly concluded that digital media provides no measurable substitute for intellectual growth when compared to traditional hard copy reading. So again, this could be more concise, but I think in general this is the most accurate representation of what Johnson is saying, as opposed to what the NEA study has reported that we saw in all of the writing prompt examples for this week. So good work. All of these are accurate representations of his thesis. They could just use a little bit of tweaking in general ways. So let's go back to the discussion itself, and I want to cover some logistical things quickly. When you comment on each other's work by Friday night for that Friday at midnight deadline, I'm really just looking for some feedback here. It's not going to be in-depth as in-depth as what you would do in an open discussion, but if you're looking for some examples of the kind of commentary I'm looking for, you can look at Horatio's thread here, because he got a couple of good comments, and Amber asked a question and then Horatio came back in and answered it, and the conversation went on from there. But I also want to point out some things about your end of week reflections. Several of you posted your reflections for Sunday night in a separate thread, kind of like what Jessica has done here in her post titled Final Reflection. I actually want you to go ahead and go back into your own original thread and create a reply so that you can kind of attach that reflection to the end of your own entire thread. Much as Jessica has done here, I would just have her talk about the things she talked in that reflection post a little bit more in her final reply to her own thread here for the end of the week. So just logistically, make sure that you go in and access your own threads for when you're posting your final end of week reflections. And then also for the end of week reflections, you should respond to the comments you received, but that's not necessarily the primary goal. You're really just trying to reflect on everything you've learned throughout the week. So I'm going to post another video to talk about the open discussions, and I'll be back in just a minute.